Good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting on March 3rd, 2025, and it is 5:15. Present at the committee is Councillor Beck, Councillor Mallor, Councillor Tremblay, Councillor Hawes, myself, Councillor Fish, Councillor Dean, and Chair Pelletier. And also present tonight is our Finance Director, David Little.
Thank you.
Oh, and online, just joining us is Councillor Leonard.
All right, our first item tonight is a bid for the ground power unit for the airport. We did go out to bid on this unit. We received 4 bids. The low bidder was deemed to not meet bid specifications. So staff recommendation is to go with the second lowest bidder, which is Aero Specialties for $52,358. The approved budget amount for this item was $55,000. So we're just looking for approval to move forward with Aero Specialties.
Do I have a motion to move forward with the bid for Aero Specialties?
So moved.
Second.
Very good.
Thank you. Our next item is a request from our Treasury Clerk Department. This is for a write-off of the taxes on 3 mobile homes located in Praise Mobile Home Park at 438 Finson Road. Streamside Pines, you'll see, is the new owner of the park. When they purchased the park, the purchase came with 3 mobile homes. They were not informed at the time of the sale that all of those homes also had matured taxes against them. And all of those homes are in extremely poor condition. They're uninhabitable. Included some photos in the packet. The park owner has approached the city. This has been done in the past as well with other park owners. With a proposal that they would like to demolish the 3 mobile homes, bring up the lots. And in sort of a conjunction with the city, if we'd be willing to write off the taxes that are due, will forego the taxes. They'll go through the expense of demolishing the trailers. The city's alternate plan, if you wanted to not write off the taxes of approximately $3,600, is we would have to essentially enforce the matured lien. Once done and we became the owner of the property, we would be then liable for lot rent or moving the trailers off site. We expect that they would not survive a trip off site, which means demolishing them on site, which at our own cost, as well as insuring them and making sure that they're insured and protected and sealed up in the meantime. The tax collector, the finance director, myself, as well as the legal department, we met and talked about this. We went through the provisions. Also under the new foreclosure law, we would have to get the trailers appraised. Don't expect that it's going to be a lot, but again, if it is more than the taxes due, we would be responsible for paying back to the previous owner any amount that the appraisal came in over the amounts due in taxes. It seemed pretty clear that financially it was in the best interest of the city to just write off the just under $3,700 in taxes, allow the park to demolish the properties themselves with that cost and free up 3 lots for new housing. So that is our recommendation on staff level.
Councillor Beck.
I have a question. It was my understanding with the liens, we put them on the properties and they're not supposed to be able to be sold until they're paid off.
Yes.
How did they get around that?
Unfortunately, that happens a lot. Normally, personal trailers are a little bit odd in the fact that they are considered personal property, except for taxation purposes in which they are considered real estate. So when we file a lien, we file the lien at the Penobscot Registry of Deeds. It isn't always the first place that people look for a lien on a mobile home because they're considered personal property. Typically, there's a UCC filing on a lien for related type stuff. Where taxes are filed at the Penobscot Registry of Deeds. It is something that we see on a regular basis with mobile homes, but we also see it with regular homes that are owner financed or other things. People fail to do the title search and they are sold on them, sometimes matured liens on them, and we're dealing with the new owners to try to get those paid. That's not how it's supposed to happen, but that is what happens in real life.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? That was my question as well. I thought it was odd that if they had a title search for purchase of this significance that, the liens wouldn't have been found. But I also know, last summer, we had to have a mobile home removed from a lot, and just to remove that one mobile home, it was $3,500, so. So do we have a motion to waive the tax liens for, I'm sorry.
I just had a follow-up on that, because I guess the way I'm reading it is that, you know, the seller didn't disclose this. And it sounds almost like a legal issue between the buyer and the seller, and somehow the city got caught up on this. You know, where it feels like, you know, this is something they should go back after the buyer or the seller for, of, hey, you didn't disclose this when we bought this.
Right. And that is a potential, course of action if the city chose, nope, we want our taxes to be paid. Not that I want to give anybody ideas, but the downside of that is the new owner just says, fine, I'm just not gonna pay the taxes on those 3 trailers. And sooner or later, you're gonna need to do something with them, because as a mature tax lien, under state law, they will eventually become your property anyway. That's not the best working relationship with the city, but it is a possibility. And for $3,700, it seemed like, let's just get these cleaned up and create some housing opportunities.
Okay, and then have they said they're gonna actually, I would love to hear if there was some assurance that it would be like affordable housing, like, hey, we're gonna put these on here and we're gonna, you know, give the city something and some assurance and say, we're gonna put a covenant on this to keep it affordable, something, rather than us just crossing our fingers.
I think, you know, with mobile home parks, that's not something we've typically tried to do, because it's usually related to the lot rent. I don't know to be honest with you, I don't know today if the owner is looking at putting 3 trailers that the park will still own, or if he's just freeing up the lots for new tenants to move in. But I do think that part of the agreement that we do with him based on the approval tonight, we will still make sure that these get torn down in a timely manner, and we're not looking at this stuff 4 or 5 months from now. Maybe with the current, you know, weather, at least springtime, early summer at the latest, that these are gone and we have some lots available.
Sure, and then I try to understand though, the bottom line is to try to stick them with this, it's throwing good money after bad.
Yes.
Okay,
Any other questions or comments? Do we have, a motion to write off the taxes for Praise Park lots 5A, 6, and 48?
I'll make a motion to go staff recommendation to write off the tax lien on these 3 properties.
Second. Thank you. Our last item tonight is a review of our second quarter financials for fiscal year 25. This is through the end of December. And included in your packet, and what I've done in previous presentations regarding the financials, we show that what our full budget is, in a normal, if everything was spent on a regular basis, we would be at roughly 50% of our budget through the end of December. We show the variances that we may have in certain categories, and any that are plus or minus 10% from where we think we may be. I had a little explanation as to why we're there, and then answer any questions that you may have that I may be able to answer tonight. So taxes, looking at 95% of the full budget. That is essentially because primarily taxes, particularly property taxes, are booked upon July when they're committed. We book them all as revenue at that time, and we'll create a receivable which falls to our balance sheet. So it always inflates the total revenues under taxes initially during the year. Because we book all of those as revenue. The other taxes that fall in there is like excise taxes that we collect throughout the year. The licenses and permits, those are slightly above where we would expect them to be at this point. And that is primarily due to an increase in victualers licenses and building permits. The fines, forfeits, and penalties, that's at 189%. This is primarily due to the vacant building fees, which were not, that was started prior to or after the budget was approved. So there is no budget to collect those fees. So that all of that money is creating additional revenue during that fiscal year. The overage that we have of about 32,000, that is approximately the balance of the vacant property fees. Everything else is typically in line with where they should be. And the last item is the revenue from use of money. This is typically rentals for the Parks and Rec facilities, interest earnings, franchise fees. And it's a slightly lower than where we would expect to be at this time, due to timing of rental charges, for some of the Parks and Rec facilities. The rest of the categories in revenue, are pretty much on par with budget and where we would expect them to be. So are there any questions on the revenue side?
I guess the only question I have is, I guess with the taxes, if we know each year that, you know, we put the money on the books as soon as we send the bills out, I guess going forward in future years, can we change that budget projection through December to reflect that reality, just so that number on the difference isn't so blown out?
Well, what we do is we book those as revenues because we book them when they're recognized, which is when we assess the taxes and commit the tax. Then we create a receivable. What I could do on here is we could start showing some of the receivable piece to let you know how much of the current year we've collected as a side informational type thing. It would,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like I said, with that budget projection, like I look at last year's and I look at, you know, where we are this year as well, is, you know, again, if we know that, hey, part of the nature of this beast is when those bills go out, you know, we show it, you know, as a, you know, actual revenue now, you know, the budget projection, it'd be nice if it would reflect that, just so it doesn't look so out of whack.
okay, yeah, we can make some modifications to show those odd types of things that get booked. And you'll see the same thing on the expense side. There are things that get booked at the beginning of the year. There's some things that don't get booked till the end of the year. So there's also some categories that really kind of look a little weird.
Yeah, that's all I have for that.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
So we'll move on to the expense side. Again, same thing, a few categories are beyond plus or minus of the 50%. City council being one slightly lower, that is due to through the end of December, there were fewer travel expenses related to the council than there had been in the prior year up to that point. But that I think will be taken care of in the next week. The Central Services Division, that looks a little weird at a negative 24%. That all relates to the timing. Our Central Service Department does a lot of work for internal departments, particularly the school department. And then there's charges that go out, so there's credits that come back to that department for those charges. And it's a timing of between when those credits get posted versus when the expenses get posted. So that will level out a little bit as we move on. Same with the motor pool. That is also a factor of timing of when the charges for the motor pool vehicles that are rented from the motor pool by departments are typically billed all at once for the entire year, as opposed to spending the staff time to do multiple billings throughout the year. It's all done at once. So there's a huge amount of income that comes in, and then throughout the year that levels out as we go on. The insurance line that looks like we're pretty much spent, but that is again, sort of works the opposite way. We pay our insurance bills and then we allocate it and we separate it out to various departments, including the enterprise funds for their share of the insurances. So there'll be some internal billings that will go out to allocate out that insurance that will bring that number down to be in line. Going down to our tax increment financing. Those are related to when those that are under a TIF or a credit enhancement agreement pay their taxes. So typically in September, not all of them sometimes pay in September. So we will track that as we go. And when they make their tax payment, we do whatever portion is being returned to them or modified or needs to be transferred out of the fund. We do that. Some of those are some of the people under the credit enhancement agreements pay the full year's taxes in September. So instead of it being split half and half, it's a little heavier on the September end. There's out of that fund, there is usually a budget transfer that would transfer the money out of the TIF for other expenses that the council has approved. Those are typically done near the beginning of the year, which also helps to inflate that number. Pensions, that looks really low, but that is essentially, those are our pension obligation bond. We have one debt service payment a year. The debt service payment is not, we get the bill in May and the due date is in June. So that sits there until we make that payment, later on in the year. Transfers, those are, approved transfers during the budget process, typically for, capital items that are being funded from our operation budget. Those are all done near the beginning of the year so that the money is there in the capital projects. So that as those projects are being worked on, they know what their funding is, at the time. And other agencies, that's the library, the county taxes, et cetera. Again, those are typically, the funding is usually done on a quarterly basis, so that would make a little more sense with what we're looking at here. Except for the county tax, when we make that one large payment, that kind of inflates that number for a while until it gets caught back up. So that's where those differences are there. Everything else is pretty much in line. If you look at our total budget, through the end of December, we're at 50.65% of where our projected budget is, in total. So we're pretty much in line of where we would expect to be.
Any questions, Councilor Beck?
I was saying, you're looking at just a 1% difference, that's pretty good.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's great.
No one else have
Questions?
any questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
That is all we have for the agenda tonight.
I may as well, Rick, sorry, can I ask the question? How's the audit coming?
You didn't let me go long enough, so that's all I had on the agenda. However, I did want to give an update. I sent what we believe is a full draft of the audit financials to down to the auditors this morning. Which includes all the changes that we are aware of at this point. So now we're waiting for them to reach back out to us as far as any of their last review. They'll probably send us some items that we'll need to change. We'll get that done. Then it'll go to tech review. They'll send us stuff that they'll want changed. We'll get that done. And then hopefully we'll get an opinion. I did reach out to the auditors trying to look for an estimated timeline as to when that may occur. But I know that they were working with some other clients. I've not heard back from them, so I didn't have an answer for you tonight, from their timeline, but from our perspective, we're done. Pending whatever else they may need to test or pull, so, that was from our side, a good thing. We'll see how things progress, but, we're chugging along. The end hopefully is in sight. That's everything. That is all I have for finance.
Okay, that's it. Then our meeting is concluded.